And there you have it, folks. The offense for Georgia finally became what we needed it to become, what we were hoping that it would become, what some of us were expecting it to become, what some of us were just hoping that it would become. And it did become that on Saturday between the hedges against Kentucky. Bobo and Beck finally got it together. We'll go through a few numbers, even though you've already seen them. Beck, 28 of 35 for 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 11.1 yards per completion, 95.6 QBR. Beck, ever slowly creeping up the rankings in ESPN's QBR, which no one knows how it's calculated. But Beck was 5th last week. I think he was at 79. I have this same computer. The tabs stay open all week. I simply open it up. It's on last week's page, and I hit refresh, and I see where he jumps to. He is now 3rd. He has jumped 2 people, and he is at 83.3 is Carson Beck, which is just behind Connor Wegman, who isn't playing football right now. He hasn't been the last few weeks, and Jaden Daniels of LSU, who is basically required to throw deep balls on every play, at least in the games that I've watched him. Beck now up to 1,886 yards on the season, 11 touchdown passes, and just 3 interceptions. He's looking the part. He is coming into his own. This was Georgia's biggest test. I don't believe that Kentucky is the best team that Georgia will play if they end up winning a national championship or making the playoff or winning the East for that matter. But they are a very good team. They're a very well-coached team. And Georgia was on upset alert as they are, seems like every other year with Kentucky. And they showed up and dominated from the get-go. Kentucky had some shots. They had some chances, missed some deep balls early, some really bad penalties in the first half. I want to call these guys named Yeager Burton, I believe, and Deion Walker. Just 2 really dumb penalties in the first half that set Kentucky back. Burton is an offensive guard, I believe. He just dove on one of Georgia's defensive linemen and set his team back 15 yards, set the drive back. Deion Walker is a defensive lineman, and on a batted ball, Carson Beck had a ball batted, and it was clearly an incomplete pass. Kentucky picks it up and runs it, which is fine. You never know what the official is going to rule. And he takes Cedric Van Pran may have done a little bit of acting here. I don't know, but Deion Walker's a big man, so if he puts his shoulder into your chest, you might go down, even if you're Cedric Van Pran Granger. And he did, and it set his team back, or actually gave Georgia a first down because they're the ones that had the ball there. And after that, you miss those opportunities against Georgia, against this Georgia team. And after that, it was on. The route was on. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, the kid has been blocking his behind off for 2 straight years. The iconic block, in my opinion, he doesn't get the praise for it he deserves, but in the national championship game when Brock Bowers is scoring at the end of the game, the go-ahead or the push-ahead touchdown, I don't know if it was the go-ahead touchdown. I can't remember. But a big touchdown, a big touchdown and a huge moment, and Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint has got his man locked up on the outside. Brock Bowers walks into the end zone. A kid who broke his leg. Graham wrote about this in the 12 Things. If you're not subscribed to Dawgs Central, go subscribe right now. The 12 takeaways that Graham writes every Sunday, Monday-ish, whenever he gets it in, is worth the price of admission. Just a few dollars a month. I don't know the exact cost off the top of my head. They might have a deal going on. I don't know. They don't tell me about stuff like that. They just say, make sure that you don't let any proprietary information out. And I'm trying not to do that from here on out. I did it previously a few weeks ago, and I'm not going to say I was threatened. I'm just going to say that I vow to not do it again. But after Larry missed those throws, some missed opportunities, some guys that were running open, frankly. That was it. The O-line looked great this year, especially compared to the Auburn, or this week, not this year, this week, especially compared to the Auburn game. Ratledge and Truss rebounded from what was essentially an abysmal week, especially in run blocking. Jared Wilson had to come in for a series. Cedric Van Pran went down, which is scary because that's not a guy you can afford to lose, but Jared Wilson comes in at the end of the first half when the game was still in doubt. The future of the interior offensive line is in pretty good shape when you have a guy like Jared Wilson. Austin Blaskey's been out with an MCL. He also can play center as well as tackle, as we've seen. Dylan Fairchild has been playing really well. Micah Morris has been playing really well. Those guys have been rotating at left guard, while Xavier Truss has moved out to right tackle in the absence of Amarius Mims. Ernest Green had a good game. The previously mentioned Cedric Van Pran has been playing really well. And again, Tate Ratledge, it was like night and day. Somebody lit a fire up under these guys. I want to give credit to Coach Stacy Searles because he is in charge of that group for having them rebound and play the way that they did. I want to talk about the defense for a second. First of all, there was not a lot of pressure from the interior of the defensive line. I think Graham mentions that in his 12 takeaways. Well, there was one good pressure from Warren Brinson, who they threw a roughing the passer flag, which I thought was a bad call. And as I'm watching the replay, the announcers also thought it was a bad call, as did the officiating expert who was on the panel, the guys that they bring in to tell you what was going on. They basically said it was a bad call. So we did get loose once. I thought Jalen Walker looked like a potential game changer at times. It's just a matter of who is going to – we got so many guys. Chaz Chambliss is not a freaky player, but he is the consistent guy. He took over for Nolan Smith last year after the Florida game, and Georgia rode him all the way to the national championship, and he knows where to be. They trust him to be where he needs to be. Are guys like Marvin Jones Jr., who did not have a very good game at Auburn. He barely played. I don't know if there's an injury situation there. He did not play much against Kentucky. Some of these young guys like Samuel Mpemba or C.J. Madden or Gabe Harris or Wilson. Gosh, there's just so many guys. And I don't even know what their numbers are yet. It's like 26 and 29. Damon Wilson and 35. But they're all very young. A lot of those guys are true freshmen. And if they're not true freshmen, they're redshirt freshmen. So they're just sort of feeling their way out. They're all big-time five-star guys, though. So can Georgia get them in there? And will one of them emerge as a game changer at this stage? They might not. I don't know. This is still a good team without that, but it would be even better if you could get, Michael Williams. He's not even on the field all three downs at this point consistently. He's a very good player. There's no question about that. Who's the game changer on this defensive front? Is there a game changer on this defensive front? We got a lot of good. Is there going to be any great that puts us through to the next level? But I do want to talk about Chaz Chambliss because he's catching some heat about the way that he plays down blocks. It's not just Chaz, but he does it a lot. I don't know if we have the technology yet. Well, we have the technology. I don't know if I know how to use it or the production team, which is me, to put the film up on the screen. But what is happening on down blocks is that Chaz Chambliss is crashing down. Okay, imagine he's putting his hands on the tackle and he's crashing down and attacking the guard. Now, I played defensive end in high school in the early 2000s for a man named Ronnie Royston. You guys might remember a walk-on fullback at Georgia named Dustin Royston. Is his father. I would run through a brick wall for Ronnie Royston. He's a great defensive coach. I was not a great defensive player, but I did learn how to read keys from the defensive end, from the 5 technique and 9 technique positions. I don't know what they're teaching at Georgia, but when I see Chaz Chambliss putting his hands on the down blocker and attacking the guard, I know that 20 years ago, that is exactly how Ronnie Royston taught a young 165-pound defensive end, myself, to read that. Now, that was 20 years ago. I don't know if the keys have changed when you're reading that, but Chaz Chambliss doesn't strike me as the type of guy who is on the field because he can't make a read. He might have some deficiencies in his game in other areas, but he doesn't strike me as the type of guy who's going to consistently miss reads. But I have noticed since the very first game against UT Martin, teams have been exploiting what seems to be planned at this point. Georgia's put it on film that they are susceptible to this. It's the read option. The quarterback is basically riding the running back. He hands the ball off to him. You have guards pulling, but the running back is running outside of where the guards are pulling. So generally, the guards are going to kick out block on the defensive end, which is what Chaz Chambliss is attacking. When the running back runs outside of that, Chaz is essentially taking himself out of the play, or any outside linebacker, despite the fact that he's reading these keys correctly based on what Ronnie Royston taught me 20 years ago. And again, I'm not a scheme guy. I can talk to you about technique to a certain extent, but I'm limited in that area. I would be interested to get some more intel on that, because I'm not certain that our outside linebackers are necessarily doing the wrong thing, or if they are, I don't know why they would continually be crashing down to blow up the guard, because generally you're blowing up the guard, you're creating a pile, and the linebackers, my thinking is the linebackers might not be scraping across and replacing the outside linebacker who's crashing down to make that tackle. I'm thinking it could be an inside linebacker issue. I don't know that for a fact, but I would like to know more about that, because I have noticed more and more teams are putting that on film because Georgia has shown that they're deficient in that area for whatever reason. Probably has a lot to do with not having a guy like Jalen Carter who can also blow it up the middle. A guy like Nolan Smith is gone, who was a first-round draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Both those guys were first-round draft picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Anyway, it's just something I've noticed on film. We'll continue to follow that. I want to talk to some more people about it and just see what they think. But according to my keys that I used to read for the Stevens County Indians from 2000 to 2003, I'm not certain that it's the outside linebacker's fault. But Kendall Milton was back. He looked healthy. He looks like he was right. He looked like 2020 Kendall Milton. Breaking tackles, running through people, something that we don't always see from him, because a lot of times he's frankly just had injuries, mostly hamstring injuries. That is a young man who, the way he was running, looked like he may have seen some chatter and noise on the internet. I don't know. Or maybe he's just a passionate kid. But I love to see him running the way that he was when he got out there. Maybe he got called for a couple of holds, but overall it was good to see him back. I think it's going to be big to have him out there. Dylan Bell still getting some carries at running back. ESPN said that he had no carries, even though I watched him carry the ball with my own two eyeballs. So I don't know what game ESPN was watching. And then Dejon Edwards. Again, this guy, if Georgia is going to have a shot to win the championship, had 9 carries for 54 yards. He was huge against Auburn, averaging 6 yards a carry against Kentucky. And also Kendall got into the end zone. Okay, maybe ESPN is updated. Here we go. Dylan Bell, 3 carries for 11 yards. Andrew Paul got a little bit of time there at the end with the backups with the second team offense. So that's good, because we might need those guys with the way the running back room has been injured. Still no sign of Roderick Robinson with the ankle issue, so we'll see if he makes it back. Georgia has moved up average scoring margin, I think last week they were, let me see if I can pull this up. Last week, Georgia was 14th in average scoring margin. This week, they are now 5th. So top 5 is kind of where you want to be. They're beating their opponents by an average of 25 points a game. They are scoring an average of 39.2, according to this website. I actually thought it was a little higher than that. I thought it was in the 40s, but 39.2, and then they are allowing just 14.2 points per game, which is more than we're used to with Georgia teams, but it's a good spot to be in. They are that's still outside the top 10, but the scoring margin, they are 7th now, and the margin of victory is top 5. So that's a big improvement, a big step forward for Georgia. I want to take a minute to talk about Carson Beck. First of all, he threw an interception. I know I've already talked about Carson Beck. I was actually going to say somebody else, but then I saw another Carson Beck note, so I circled back to it. He threw an interception. It was not a good throw. He threw it into triple coverage, trying to throw the ball to Dominic Lovett. Not a bad guy to try to get the ball to, but he overthrew it. But he did make the tackle, though. And Carson Beck is a kid who a couple years ago was criticized because he threw an interception and kind of jogged after the guy who ran it into the end zone. It was a pick 6. I'm glad that Carson Beck didn't harm himself whilst trying to make this tackle. But he got in there and chopped the guy down, which I want to say I got to give him credit for that. Even though it was not a good throw, you can't have that. You do have to protect the football, which he has been doing for the most part this year. But he chased him down and made the tackle on the defensive back. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, I actually didn't say his numbers when I was talking about him earlier. So just to circle back to the game that he had, 4 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown. So just 1 yard short of 3 bills there for Marcus Rosemy-Jackson. He's become a big part of this offense. They're hitting him with back shoulders. He even got called for an offensive pass interference. It may have been a good call, I don't know, but he could have had even more yards than this. Brock Bowers, again, 7 receptions for 132 yards and a touchdown. They are really running the offense through him. Defenses are keying on him, which is opening up guys like Ra Thomas on the outside, who had an exceptional touchdown catch. I think we're going to look to continually get Dominic Lovett involved. Oscar Delp had a touchdown catch. Ladd McConkey is working his way back in. He only had the 1 catch, but it was for 11 yards and a first down. Seems like all he's done so far this year when he's played this week and last week against Auburn is make first down catches on out routes. So having all those guys back is important. Mekhi Muse still doing a pretty good job returning punts. Almost had a big return that got called back on a penalty, which I'm not sure the penalty really helped him too much as far as him springing loose. And I do want to also mention Peyton Woodring went 3 for 3 on his field goal. So he looks like he's coming into his own, looks more like the number 1 kicker in the nation, which is what he was ranked when he was brought in. And another player I wanted to talk about, just something to keep an eye on, Arian Smith has not really been getting involved. He has not been, he's been on the field, he just hasn't been catching passes in this offense. And I just can't help but think, because I'm always looking for him, he's a kid who I really thought might be able to have a shot at going over 1,000 yards. I think he's that kind of player. He's super fast. I think if he was maybe playing for another team, the team might not be as good as Georgia, but I think if they're airing it out to him, I think he could be a 1,000-yard kind of player. But I did notice, I think it was after Oscar Delp's touchdown, or maybe it was one of Brock's when he got in the end zone, or he only had 1 touchdown, but Arian Smith comes into the frame and he's excited for his teammates. He's staying engaged. He is on the field. I think they got him 1 carry. It may have gotten called back on a penalty, but he did have a carry. They're trying to get the ball to him, and it hasn't clicked yet like it clicked with Stetson Bennett last year when Arian Smith finally got healthy. It's great that he is finally healthy, and I just keep an eye out for him. You just never know. He has game-breaking speed, and you never know when a player like that is going to suddenly have a big game when you need him in a big moment. I mean, against Ohio State, Arian Smith was one of the heroes of that game. He caused his defender to fall and scored a big-time touchdown, which down the stretch, if not for that quick score, Georgia probably does not win that game. So just keep an eye out for Arian. I think that I don't think that we've seen the last of him, and you just never know. You never know with a kid like that. Had a Lawson Lucky sighting. Haven't seen much out of him since the spring game. He had the high ankle sprains that seem to be plaguing this team. I think he had the surgery where they go in there and put some dental floss in to try to fix it. Seems like a good method to me to fix a high ankle sprain. Just hit it with some dental floss. Sounds like a 1930s method and tried and true. But just keep an eye out for him. That we've heard a lot of great things about him. He only came in with the second team. Pierce Sperlin also had a big catch. So a lot of good to take away from the game against Kentucky. I was told at the South Carolina game that the offense had turned a corner. That was a turning point at halftime. And then we get to Auburn, and seems like we're still the same team. And then I'm told at halftime of the Auburn game, oh, maybe this is a turning point for the offense. Beck came out and put it on his shoulders. And we finally saw in Kentucky what we were hoping for going into the Auburn game. And it looks like Mike Bobo in this offense, they're going to put more on Carson Beck, and he showed that he can handle it. So we will see if that continues. Georgia has Vanderbilt up next. Vanderbilt lost to Florida. I won't say that it was with a backup quarterback, even though Ken Seals was the starter over A.J. Swan. It seems like Ken Seals may have just played well enough. I'm not sure Swan was 100% though. So they went ahead and went with Ken Seals. 38-14 win. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but it seems like a pretty decisive win. Looks like Florida rushed for over 215 yards. Montrell Johnson had 135 yards and a touchdown. And those are Georgia's next two opponents, is why I bring that up. They got Vanderbilt, then the bye week, they're both coming at good times. It's the best road trip in the SEC if you haven't gotten a chance to go. I unfortunately will not be able to make it this year. Georgia is going to need that bye week to get healthy, and then we're headed to Jacksonville. And I will be down there as long as my tickets process, and we will see y'all at TIAA Bank Field. I think that's what it's called now. The names change all the time. We'll see how long that game stays down there. It's the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. We will always call it that here because that's what it is. Thank you guys for joining us on the Overdog podcast. I'm going to start trying to remember to say the name of the podcast at the beginning, but at least I've said it here at the end. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.